Saurus Rider by Benjamin Michael Tanner. In the 20 years since the fall of Sauriskia, the last surviving colony of the once mighty empire has established for itself a peaceful and prosperous kingdom, Eurasia, on the eastern shore of the fierce and beautiful land known as Dinova. This kingdom, made up of several different warrior clans and cultures, with all kinds of different species of dinosaurs, lived isolated and secluded from the outside world of this new primitive land, never venturing far and unaware of what else dwelled deep within the jungles beyond their great stone walls. These warrior cultures, the Saurus Riders, named for their ability to communicate, bond with, and ride the dinosaurs they coexisted with, were far more advanced from the more primitive, as of yet unknown hominids of Dinova. They were masters of combat, wielding a massive variety of beautiful and deadly weapons made from bronze, iron, and a special kind of metal called Sauriskian steel, which was stronger than any other material. The different warrior cultures of old Sauriskia were unique by race, but all bonded by their kinship with dinosaurs. The Shigali were a tribal, coastal people who lived their lives as fishermen more than hunters, hunting in the reefs alongside ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs, but were equally as skilled fighters as any other race, with great rempharinkids serving as their chosen battle mounts. The Tyraxans were the most skilled craftsmen and blacksmiths who mastered the art of forging Sauriskian steel with the help of the great Balor smiths. The Balors were a giant race, living in kingdoms in the depths of mountains and volcanoes, where they first mastered the art of smithing and taught it to their smaller Tyraxan neighbors. Though since the fall of Sauriskia, their sacred mountain halls were now all but a memory. The Amazons were among one of the most well-known warriors of Sauriskia, made up of entirely female clans and living a tribal lifestyle in the jungle with their carnosaur companions and Simbari allies. The Simbari were a dark-skinned race similar to the natives of our modern Africa. They were among the proudest cultures of Sauriskia, famed for their prowess as both hunters and warriors. The Arunatai herald from the frigid tundra lands of northern Sauriskia, bonding with the great woolly ceratopsids and heavily coated tyrannosaurs that shared these northern territories with them, living as hunters and gatherers, but can still hold their own in combat as well as any other Saurus rider. Then finally, there are the Hyraceans, the greatest of the Saurus riders, adorned in their suits of scaly armor, wielding swords, battle axes, and warhammers. They charge into battle astride the mightiest of predatory dinosaurs. For their greatness, the Hyraceans ruled over as the imperial race of Sauriskia, with their allies, the Rornai, wielding katanas of Sauriskian steel and adorned in their black armor, serving as the Hyracean emperors as guards and rangers, protecting the realm from the shadows. But not even the Rornai could protect the realm from the catastrophic event that had brought the empire to its knees 20 years ago. According to legend, the whole continent of Sariskia was a massive supervolcano, the largest of the planet of Kratoris, that had been dormant for millions of years. Then, without warning, an asteroid, known by the ancient scholars as the Typhon's Eye, crashed into the center of the continent, causing the great volcanic crater to roar to life with fire and brimstone. Within a single night, 90% of Sariskia's people and wildlife had been wiped out. Only one armada of ships managed to escape the extinction and sailed westward, eventually settling on Dinova's shores. Thus, the first Dinovan kingdom of the Saurus riders, Eurasia, was founded. Sauron, a Hyrasian rider, dark brown mane of hair, of the clan Ironaxe, sat close to the fire with two of his Rornai companions, Oda and Leon. With them were three large theropod dinosaurs. Two were the Megalosauri steeds of the Rornai. The third, an obsidian black prototheropod that belonged to Sauron himself. The Fellowship of Shield Brothers sat around a fire they had made for themselves in the middle of a clearing in the jungle. Tonight's topic of discussion was a very enjoyable one, about the girls at the pleasure house in the city. Ota mentioned that Simbari girl in the golden microkini, the one with the golden and orange butterfly tattooed on her ass. Ota mentioned through the metaphor of pollinating the butterfly for 5 gold that the Simbari dancer let Ota fuck her for a cheap price. Leon praised his shield brother for the success of getting laid with a Simbari. They then turned to Sauron, asking if he ever took to a girl that enticed his desire. Sauron said no, as he didn't share the same urge to hump a girl whenever she spread her buttocks open as his fellows did. No, though he did have a deep passion, love, and appreciation for women, he never engaged in any sexual activity with a girl, unless he was with someone he truly loved. However, Sauron had not yet met that special girl he could give his heart to. Therefore, Sauron never got laid in his life. Though Ota and Leon were taken back by Sauron hesitating to indulge himself in the pleasures of women, they understood wholly why he never did, as he had told them his reasons many times before. Sauron knew not who this would-be lover would be, nor when he would find her, but he knew that she was out there somewhere, and someday he was going to find her. Suddenly, the sound of a woman screaming in distress broke the silence of the jungle. The dinosaurs perked their heads up and sniffed the air. The black prototheropod, the Niter, spoke up. "There's a woman out there, and she's being hunted." "By what?" Sauron asked. Niter sniffed the air again. "Ceratos." Ceratos were the name that the Saur Riders called the group of Jurassic predators that we on Earth would call Ceratosaurus. "Riders, mount up!" Sauron commanded. The 3 warriors sprang onto the backs of their dinosaur brothers, fastening themselves to their saddles and taking hold of the reins. "Niter, lead the hunt!" The Niter bellowed as he dashed into the forest with the 2 Rornai right behind him. Niters flared his nostrils, sniffing the air as he thundered forward on 4 powerful legs like a fearsome black panther. His great head turned right as he caught the girl's scent and headed in that direction, with Aurornai keeping pace. Samina, the Neanderthal slave girl, ran limping through the forest, naked and bleeding from a deep slash wound on her thigh from an attacking Cerrado. Samina was part of a Neanderthal clan from the Great Fern Sea to the north, whose village was attacked by a raiding party of Cerrados and a squad of intelligent dinosaur soldiers known as the Trodi. Samina was among the few survivors of the onslaught who was then taken prisoner, and being taken to one of the mines operated by the Empire of Dinova. In the midst of an ambush by rebel dinosaurs, Samina was able to free herself from her shackles and escape into the forest. She didn't stop running until she was sure that she had eluded her captors, and shortly collapsed from exhaustion. When she awoke, she was taken by surprise when a Cerrado had seized her by the thigh and torso with his great four-clawed hands. Samina managed to grab a sharp stick as the dinosaur lifted her off the ground and jabbed it into the Cerrado's eye. The dinosaur reeled in pain as Samina managed to slip away from the beast's clutches, but not without a claw slashing her leg in the process. For 2 whole hours, Samina limped her way through the dark jungle, trying her best to stay one step ahead, though the shearing pain in her leg was agonizing. Her leg throbbed with every step, and it only got worse the further she went. She could hear the Cerrado and 2 others close behind her. Samina was moving slowly, and she knew that the dinosaurs could have easily run her down and torn her to pieces, but they haven't done so yet. And Samina knew exactly why. They were toying with her, taking their time, waiting for her to collapse from her leg wound. Only then would they end her life, but not in a quick, merciful way. Samina began to cry as she could feel her leg giving out, until finally she stumbled and collapsed. Samina was on the ground now, gripping her leg. It was stinging unbearably. Blood had covered Samina's entire leg. The 3 pursuing Cerrados emerged from the foliage, stalking towards the defenseless, wounded girl. Leading them was the same that inflicted the gash on Samina's leg, with the stick still embedded in the carnivore's eye. The remaining eye gleamed a bright red at Samina, and an evil, toothy grin stretched across the scaly lips. Samina sobbed frantically as she tried to crawl away, but it wasn't any use. The Captain Cerrado was now upon her, placing one great 3-toed foot on top of Samina's back, preventing any other attempt of escape. Samina shut her eyes tight, sobbing, as she could feel the dinosaur's snout just inches away from her face, spewing hot breath from its nostrils. The Cerrado growled a guttural language of which Samina's people knew not. The Cerrado drew back his great head and opened his jaws wide, his teeth flashing, ready to deliver the blow that would make the kill. With her death at hand, Samina let out one last scream as the Cerrado's jaws darted down on the Neanderthal girl's head. Just before the captain could sink his fangs into Samina's skull, the huge, dark shape of the Niter came crashing through the ferns, head like a battering ram, smashing into the side of the Serato, sending him flying off his feet and away from the girl. Samina opened her eyes and looked up to see a massive, four-legged predator she had never seen before, standing between her and the Ceratos. Her eyes glanced up towards the shape on the dinosaur's back and gasped. There was a man, a warrior, not one of the Neanderthals, sitting in a saddle, riding this dinosaur. The warrior, Sauron, glanced down at the naked Neanderthal girl with his sky blue eyes for an instant. He felt his heart skip a beat. This girl was the most beautiful he had ever seen, fairer than any dancer, shield maiden, or Amazon of Eurasia. Her frame was fully built, her thighs stocky, hips broad, and breasts plump. She bore the face of a babe, with eyes and hair like night. The spark in Sauron's young heart was now inflamed, and his blue eyes turned to a piercing red. Sauron drew his axe from his back and roared down at the Captain Serato before him. With a single bound from his saddle on the Niter's back, he was now upon the Serato, hacking at him madly with his mighty battle axe, roaring with fury. The sight of a human with the fury and power of the very dinosaur which he rode was terrifying to the two standing Ceratos. Neither one of them dared to intervene. Even the savagery of Sauron terrified Samina. By the time Sauron was done, the Serato had been completely butchered, with blood and entrails all over. Sauron finally turned his attention to the quivering Serato scouts. You trespass into the borders of my kingdom to prey on a defenseless woman for mere sport! Sauron thundered in a fury. Cowards! You are a disgrace to your kind and an insult to the Leviathan Mazork. You know our tongue. You are of Sariskia. How can this be? Your land sank into the Tethys. Your empire is extinct. Ota and Leon entered the scene on the backs of their megalosaurs. Some of us still live, Serato, Ota spoke up. Samina listened in on the conversation between her saviors and the two remaining Ceratos. To her, the two sides were merely speaking in animalistic growls that she couldn't even come close to understanding, for the indigenous Neanderthals of Dinova were not gifted in the language or understanding of the Saurus tongue as the writers of Eurasia were. When their chief deity, the Leviathan Mazork, had granted upon the men of ancient Sariskia at the dawn of their civilization. This woman is imperial property. Give her to us, one scout said boldly. This woman is no one's property, Sauron screamed in rage, his eyes blazing with fury. She is now under the protection of my kingdom. You want her back? Try and take her. Sauron flashed his axe as the Niter stood at his side, teeth and talons bared, with the two Rornai standing with them, their katanas drawn. The Serato scouts began backing away, outmatched and outnumbered. They weren't about to risk life and limb for the sake of one slave girl, and they turned and fled. Satisfied at the enemy's cowardly retreat, Sauron snorted with triumph and turned his attention towards the Neanderthal girl. Looking upon her beauty, Sauron's red glare faded. The Hyrasian warrior withdrew his axe to the holster on his back and approached the Neanderthal. Samina winced back and whimpered with fright. Sauron shushed her soothingly as he stretched out his hand slowly. He knelt down to the girl's eye level and gently placed his hand on her cheek. "Don't be afraid, my lady," he said to her, now speaking in the common tongue of men. "You're safe now." Samina gazed at him with her dark midnight eyes as Sauron brushed her black locks over her right ear. "I am Sauron, of Clan Ironaxe, of Eurasia. What is your name?" "Samina. My name is Samina." Samina's eyes shifted rightwards, now staring into the eyes of the Nighter, peering at her over Sauron's shoulder. Samina whimpered again at the sight of the huge predator. "It's all right. He's with me." Sauron motioned his hand for the Nighter to approach. "This is my Saurus brother, the Nighter." He held out his hand to Samina, prompting her to take it in hers. Samina slowly took Sauron's hand, and to her shock and amazement, he placed her hand on the tip of the Nighter's nose. The Nighter emitted a rumbling purr deep within his throat as he absorbed the soft touch of Samina's hand. Samina smiled as the Nighter looked upon her with the eyes of a hatchling. Samina gasped as the Nighter lurched his snout forward, nuzzling her naked body, making Samina giggle. "He likes you," Sauron remarked. "Yeah, I think I like him too," Samina chuckled with a smile. Sauron finally noticed that the sun had completely gone from the sky, and night was abroad, and with it would come the nighttime predators of Dinova. "Come, let us take you with us back to our kingdom. You'll be safe there." Sauron took Samina in his arms and mounted the Nighter. Valkyria sat by the open window of her chamber, staring off into the landscape beyond the city walls, awaiting her son to return, while also admiring the beauty of the city lights glowing in the night. Finally, a guardsman entered the room, bringing with him the news of her son's return. Valkyria sighed with relief. Valkyria met Sauron at the front door, embracing him in a tight hug, too tight for Sauron's liking. "Sauron, my dearest boy, you know how I feel about you going off into the wilderness after sundown. Mother, you worry too much. I am not your dearest boy any more. I can look after myself well enough. Plus, I had Nighter and my 2 Rorni companions with me. I know, but as your mother, it is my duty to be concerned about you. Always." Valkyria then noticed the girl that Sauron had brought with him back to the city. "And who's this?" "Her name is Samina. I rescued her from a Serato pack." Valkyria smiled proudly at her son before her eyes shifted downward to the wound on Samina's thigh. "Oh, you poor child, you're hurt," Valkyria gasped. "Sauron, take her to your chamber and get her settled. I will send servants to treat to your guest." Sauron nodded and took Samina's left arm across his shoulder and put his hand around her waist to help her balance on her leg. Within Sauron's chamber, Samina's eyes wandered around, marveling at the various garments and ornaments, swords and shields that decorated the stone walls. Never had she seen so many beautiful and wonderful objects. The servants, sent by Valkyria, as promised, had drawn a hot bath in a round bowl-shaped tub nestled within the floor. The water felt nice. It was better than any bath Samina had taken before. Not even the clearest jungle pool could come close to this. Samina lay up to her chest in sweet-smelling, soapy water. 3 servants remained within the chamber out of the 6 that had prepared Samina's bath. One was washing the dirt from her arm and shoulder with a wet cloth. Another rubbed her soapy hands through Samina's hair, and the third gently washed away the blood from her leg and gently dabbed on her wound with a wet cloth to prevent further bleeding. Sauron sat across from them on his bed and watched as Samina bathed with the servants tending to her. "How are you feeling, Samina?" "Better than I had in a long time. Thank you." The servant tending to Samina's hair took a jug of water resting next to the tub and poured the water onto Samina's head, washing the soap from her hair. Finally, Samina's bath was finished. The servant slowly rose Samina to her feet and wrapped her body in a silken towel and helped her out of the tub. The servants then turned to their lord Sauron. He nodded to them that their job was done. They nodded in response and left him and Samina alone. Samina stood and stared at Sauron with calm and peaceful eyes, and his eyes met hers with a longing and bewilderment hand in hand. The sounds of the city drew Samina's attention to the open window. She walked across the room toward the opening in the wall, and Sauron followed. Down in the streets below, Samina could see peoples of different cultures and occupations, merchants and blacksmiths trading their treasures, wares, and foods and spices of all kinds. And roaming alongside them were many different kinds of dinosaurs, from large, horned, and head-shielded herbivores to man-sized dinosaurs that looked similar to large flightless birds, some of them being traders themselves. The sight that had filled Samina with the most wonder were the glowing lanterns being floated into the sky like stars from Earth drifting into the sky. Samina continued staring out the window as Sauron walked up next to her. "Why have I not heard of this wonderful place before?" Samina asked. "We Saurus riders are not of this land. This kingdom, and all who dwell within its walls, are all that remains of old Sariskia, before it fell into the Tethys. We have only been settled in this land for 20 years, Sauron spoke out. "Then you know not of the conflict that plagues this land and our people?" Samina asked again. "I do not. But I think I'm about to find out. Tell me, who were those Serratos, and why were they chasing you?" "They were captains of a slave caravan, and servants to Taraxor, monarch of Dinova. He has ensued war between my people and dinosaurs of this land, Now my people are hunted for food to fill the bellies of his horde, and his thralls to build his cities, or to be pitted against each other, and their most fearsome warriors in his fighting pits. Sauron's brows furrowed with anger. And what was to be your fate? I was to be sold to an obsidian mine with the rest of my people, who were not spared the mercy of death. That is, until I escaped and was saved by you. Samina paused in silence and peered into Sauron's blue eyes, hers flashing like stars. And for that, I owe you a gratitude befitting my savior. Samina let her silken towel slink onto the stone floor, revealing her full tan and naked body. Sauron's eyes grew wide as he took a step back, his heart beating faster. Samina stepped over to him, placed her hands on his chest, and backed him against the wall. Sauron looked into the baby face of the Neanderthal girl, a warm smile lined across her voluptuous full lips. She inched herself forward, and her lips embraced his as she pulled him in for a kiss. Sauron was taken back at the suddenness of his current position, but even he himself could not deny what he was feeling at that moment, and he embraced Samina's kiss, and encircling his well-made arms about her waist, holding her tight. Samina moaned under her breath as she continued to kiss her hero. Finally, she drew her lips away and whispered, "I want you." Sauron whispered back, "And I you. Forever, forever, and always." For the first time in his life, Sauron felt love. He had found a fair and beautiful girl that only he alone could hold in his arms and his heart. The one true love that he could share his bed with and keep warm at night. It was there that Sauron Ironaxe had given his heart to Samina of the Neanderthals.